Hey guys. So I'm going to go over some of these papers that we've been taking the last couple days, and I've been doing that by going over a presentation with all of this information and then kind of talking about some of the documents as we go. So if there's, since this is a recording, you can pause while you take notes. So if I say something that you want to write down, just pause it for a second, or you can rewind it, go back and listen, and I'll tell you which paper to grab and hold it up so you know exactly which paper you should be writing on at what point. For this first part of the presentation, it will just be a little bit more on the information side, so just sit back, listen, and then I'll tell you when you can grab a paper and start writing. So make sure you have a pencil handy, so when we get to that point, it should be good. So I'm going to share my screen so you can see our presentation. Here we go. Okay, so really quick, we're talking mainly about the Utah War and how all of these other things kind of were affected by the Utah War or led to the Utah War. So first thing, to start this off, we're going to talk about some of the government leaders. This guy right here is President Buchanan from Buchanan. He was elected in March 1857. And we're going to learn a little bit more about him later. So President Buchanan, he was not a fan of the Mormons and how Governor Young or Brigham Young kind of ran the Utah Territory. So because of that, he put this guy, Governor Alfred Cumming, in charge of the Utah Territory. He's like, nope, Brigham Young, you can't make yourself governor. We're going to put this guy in charge. And so he puts this guy in charge, and we're going to talk a little bit more about how he does that a little later. Colonel Albert Sidney Johnson, he is the military leader of the U.S. Army at this point. So if there are, when you've been reading the documents, if you've heard about Johnson's army, this is him. And lastly, we're going to talk about Governor Brigham Young. So he is not only the prophet or the head or leader of the Mormon Church, he is also the governor of the Utah Territory. However, as I've said before, James Buchanan, not a fan of Brigham Young and how he ran things in Utah, because for the most part, they kind of connected the church aspect or religious aspect and the law aspect of life. So if you broke a local law or a law in the city, it was also a law that you broke within the church. So they kind of put those two together. And how they would deal with that was people would go and tell their bishop that, yeah, I stole something. The bishop would pull in both the people and say, okay, give back what you stole, apologize, and then the person would forgive them, and that would be how they solved their problem. So James Buchanan, he did not like this, and he was like, nope, I need to send some other people over. So he sent over some judges so that they can take over for the bishops, because he didn't feel like that was fair. They needed an actual judge to make sure that they were punished for their actions. He sent over an Indian agent so that would make sure that all of the Native Americans were getting onto their land. And he sent over a survey team so that they could kind of keep an eye on things and all of the Mormons out there. So over here, these runaway officials spread the rumor. Okay, so before we get to this, I want to tell you a little bit of background information. So when it says runaway officials, it's talking about the judges. So the judges, they had family back east, and so they would kind of go back and forth between the East Coast and Utah, visiting their families. And on one of these instances, President Buchanan gave them like $20,000 to go and take back so that they can build some roads in Utah. Now, these judges, they were like, nope, I don't like that. We don't feel like they deserve it. So instead of giving the money to Brigham Young so that they could build the roads, they took the money for themselves. But a fight kind of broke out, and the survey team, they ended up getting killed. So a fight between all the people here still in the money. And so the survey team, they ended up getting killed, and the judges, they decided they were going to blame this on Brigham Young. So over here, the survey team, they were killed, and when they went back to the East Coast, they made rumors that, you know what, Brigham Young, he was the one that ordered the Native Americans to kill the survey team. It was all his fault. Now, when they went back to the East Coast, how this worked is because they stole the money and they they really didn't want to be in Utah. They went back to the East Coast and they said to everybody, they're like, hey, Brigham Young, crazy. Like he orders his Native Americans, his Indians to kill us. We had to run for our lives or we were going to die. So that's why right here it says the runaway officials, they go back and they spread these rumors about Brigham Young and that he's corrupt. And they said, you know what? No, he took the money. We don't have it anymore. We gave it to him. He took it. He's doing what he wants with it instead of building the roads. Like it's all him. And so they take the money, blames Brigham Young, and they blame Brigham Young and the Mormons for killing the survey team as well. And because of all of these rumors that were spread, there was this fear across the United States that the Mormons and the Native Americans were planning on creating their own country out in the Utah Territory. They were going to rebel and break away, and they were worried that there was going to be an uprising that kind of made it so they would start their own country. Now, the United States, they respond to this. In 1857, President Buchanan, he sends troops to crush this rebellion. Now, because these are rumors, most often if you hear a rumor, you may not believe it. You may have to double check facts. But right here, President Buchanan, he did not check any facts. He just sent out some troops. And he wanted to crush this rebellion. Now, Utah, they heard about this. And Brigham Young, he ordered everyone to leave Salt Lake and ford up, which basically means that they're protecting the women and children and getting ready for war. So this guy, Captain Lott Smith, he stayed with 5,000 men of the Utah militia, and they were trying to slow down the army. And they did this by burning prairie grass and Fort Bridger, and they built a dam to blow up if the army made it that far, just so that their women and children could get away. So this war, how it ended because of this guy right here, Thomas Kane. And so he went to President Buchanan and he was like, listen, so I know Brigham Young and he is not this way. Like I know him personally and all of these rumors just don't sound right to me. Like, we asked President Buchanan, he said, can I go with Governor Cumming when we go and, replace Governor Young with Governor Cumming? Can I go with him and Colonel Johnson just to like check in and see how Brigham Young's doing and like see if we can make a peace? And so President Buchanan's like, sure, go with him. So Thomas Kane, Colonel Johnson, and Governor Cumming, they go to Salt Lake, and Brigham Young and some of the men still there, they welcome them and they show them around, and then they have a little meeting. And Brigham Young, he says to them, listen, like, I feel like I'm a U.S. citizen. I want to be a part of this for like the U.S. If you are here, Governor Cumming, to take my job, please take it. Like, we just want peace. We want to make sure that this is all fixed and resolved. We don't want any problems. And so basically, this guy, Thomas Kane, he ends the war because he trusts his opinion of Brigham Young, and they go and discuss and figure out that, you know what, these rumors, they're not actually true. Like, we don't understand why that was happening. They're not true. So that's how the Utah War ended. Now, we're going to kind of talk about Buchanan's blunder. This is basically kind of what all of this amounted to. People called all of this the Utah War struggle. They called it Buchanan's blunder because people back east, they're like, you know what? You didn't really handle that situation well. And these reasons right here, these 4 things are 4 of the reasons why they did not really like him all that much. And with the re-election coming up, these are 4 reasons why they weren't sure if they wanted to re-elect him. So Governor Young, he was not notified of his replacement. So it wasn't until Governor Cumming came over and he was like, yep, I'm in charge. That was when they notified him. So he didn't really have a lot of notification that he was going to be replaced, and people didn't feel like that was very respectful. Number 2, the troops were sent over a little too quickly, where they didn't really know what the situation in Utah was, and so they just felt like that was unresponsible. Third, when they sent the troops, they were not really enough, or didn't have quite good, they didn't really have very good supplies for them because it was kind of rushed, and so people felt like he just wasn't prepared. And again, some lack of planning here. They sent out the troops a little too late in the year, which made them have to wait out the winter in Wyoming. So they got stuck and they had to wait out until spring to for them to get all the way over to Utah. So for these reasons, they did not re-elect President Buchanan. Instead, they elected Abraham Lincoln in 1861. So kind of be thinking for a second. I know that you guys are learning about Abraham Lincoln in Mrs. Walker's class. Now, I know Abraham Lincoln goes along with another war, kind of happening around the same time period, but it's the Civil War. So the Civil War, they're fighting about slavery and whether they think that's right or not, and the South is seceding. So all of these problems are going on around the same time as that. So this is Abraham Lincoln is the new president. Okay, so we already talked about the Utah War and how the reasoning for the war was because of all the rumors that were spread. So on the East Coast, there were some newspapers that they kind of made these rumors worse by publishing articles, political cartoons, all of these things that kind of talked about how, you know what, yeah, the Mormons are bad and they want to start a war. And so all of these things were kind of showing those rumors. So we're going to talk about some of these papers. So right now, you'll need to have your political cartoon #1 paper. So it looks like this, if you can see on my screen. And right here, it says political cartoon #1. So grab the paper where at the top here, it says political cartoon #1, and we're going to talk about that one really quick. Okay, so cartoon #1 is this top one up here. And so the title here, Defiant Attitude of Brigham Young and Ye Indians Towards the Uncle Sam. So this kind of shows us kind of what the judges were saying, that, you know what, Brigham Young and his Indians, they were chasing us, we were going to die. But now they're saying here that not only are they chasing out the judges, but they're going to attack Uncle Sam. And Uncle Sam, if you do not know, kind of signifies the United States. Like they're thinking that Brigham Young and the Native Americans want to go to war against the United States. Now, this article, because they are in newspapers, when it says source type or source, it's asking you whether it's a primary or secondary source. Now, primary sources are sources that kind of show what ideas or things are happening in that time period. So if this is a newspaper that's around this time period, and we look back at this, this is a primary source because we can kind of see what the ideas were, even though we know that these are all kind of based off of rumors, so they're not super reliable. So when it asks you, is it reliable? They're all based off of rumors, so they're not totally reliable, but they are primary sources. All right, so the date that this was published was April 1858, and it was printed from Yankee Notions. That's the newspaper. So you can always, with some of these, you can put the newspaper as the author, because often they're not going to say exactly who drew this or who wrote this. So we can just put the newspaper as the author unless it specifically tells us who drew it or who wrote that article. However, I do believe we only have one that does that. So again, the author, Yankee Notions, right here, and the date, April 1858. Okay, now that one, again, Brigham Young, Native Americans attacking the United States. So when it says the surrounding circumstances, that's asking you, it's basically asking you, why did they draw this? Like, what's going on that made this relevant to that time period? And so again, because of the rumors that were shared, they decided to make this. So the judges coming back to the East Coast, they shared their experiences and what they think happened, and based off of their rumors, this cartoon was made. So you can say something along those lines for surrounding circumstances. Now, there are some questions at the bottom of the paper. If you want to answer the questions for the cartoon, you can go ahead and pause the video and go ahead and do that, and what you feel like, do the best that you can. But overall, we've kind of talked about what the characters represent. Like Uncle Sam represents the United States, and obviously Brigham Young and the Native Americans represent Brigham Young and the Native Americans. So things like that are how you can answer some of those questions. But go ahead and pause it so you can finish filling this out. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the political cartoon #2. Okay, so if you haven't paused it already to finish one, do that. But political cartoon #2, make sure you grab the paper that says that, if you haven't already, And again, these are all newspapers, so they are primary sources, but they're all based off of rumors, so they're not reliable. But for this one, number 2, this one, the artist is unknown. So for author, you can put unknown. And the title here is Brigham Young Mustering His Forces to Fight the United States Troops. Now, Brigham Young, he's gathering all of his people together, so all of the men, but also if you look closely, you see here, this is also a woman. And if you look back here, there's some other women, they're in dresses, and there's this woman right here, and there's another one over here. So these women, though, are they just kind of chilling on the sidelines, or are they kind of in the middle of it? Like, to me, they seem to be right in the middle of it. They've got guns, they've got the soldiers' hats, they're ready to fight. So they're being a part of this war, supposedly. So again, this is kind of talking about that rumor that Brigham Young, he wants to fight the United States. So this is kind of talking about that and those surrounding circumstances. But also, if you read down here, it says, this cartoon pokes fun at the Mormons and their practice of polygamy, having several wives simultaneously, by showing Young and other Mormon men arming their many wives to fight the Mormon War or Utah War. So this is just kind of making a joke and kind of insulting the Mormons by joking that, you know what, not only are they getting all their men prepared, but they're getting all their wives and their women, and they're just making a joke about polygamy, because the Mormons, they did practice polygamy in this time period. So this is another thing that could be written down for surrounding circumstance, is that the Mormons practiced polygamy in this time period. So that would be another thing there. Hopefully that was something that represented a lot, that told us a little bit more information about this. Again, like, who do the characters probably represent? All of the women. They kind of represent the wives of the Mormon men. So again, they practice polygamy. So that's something you could put there. And again, go ahead and pause the video and fill out the rest of the paper as much as you can based off of the information I gave you. I'll give you a second to do that, but otherwise pause the video. I'm going to move on to the political cartoon number 5. We're going to skip 3 and 4. So pause for that. Okay, if you're all done with cartoon number 2, we're going to move on to 5. We're going to skip 3 and 4. If you would like to do those on your own, that would be great and give you some more information. But for now, we're going to talk about political cartoon number 5. So this one is interesting. So again, it's in a newspaper. It's a primary source. But also, these are based off of rumors. So is it going to be reliable? Probably not. So you can put those and answer those questions. And then down here, if you look at the bottom here, it says Harper's Weekly is the newspaper. Thomas Nast was the artist, so he's the author in this case. And March 25th, 1882, that is the date that this was published. So again, be looking down at the bottom so you can kind of see that author and the date. And we already know if it's reliable. So this one is interesting. The title says, Pure White Mormon Immigration on the Atlantic Coast. More chief helpmates for Mr. Polygamist. So this guy obviously is Mr. Polygamist. Now, if you look over here, all of these women, they have signs as they're coming off the boat. So they have a cook, a chambermaid, nurse, waitress, laundress, seamstress. And again, yeah, they're coming off the boat. So this whole idea here is kind of comparing polygamy to something. So if we look over here at this little sign, it says the twin relics of barbarism. And that's like barbaric, cruel, harsh. Those twin relics are polygamy and slavery. So in this cartoon, they are comparing polygamy and slavery because, again, if Abraham Lincoln was the president around this time period, the Civil War was starting to become like a problem, and it was starting to, all of those issues with the Civil War was starting to appear. So slavery was a big issue with that war, and it was around this time period. And several people disagreed with it, but also seeing that comparison here, because slavery was such a big issue and something that a lot of people were fighting against, seeing all of this cartoon to showcase that these women were in the roles of slaves where they had work to do for the polygamous man. So basically this is showing the boat kind of represents how in the slave trade they brought slaves over from Africa and they shipped them over to the United States, brought them off the boat, and then sold them. And this kind of is showcased here. So these women are getting ready to be pawned off or sold to Mr. Polygamous. But yeah, that whole surrounding circumstance here, the Civil War, because there's the issues with slavery, this political cartoon makes a big impact on people because of that comparison. They're seeing that, you know what, polygamy is awful. Like, we didn't like it before, but now that we see how we can compare it to slavery because of that current event, that Civil War going on or getting ready to go on, people are really upset by this. So the surrounding circumstances here, I would put something about the Civil War and something about polygamy. Those would be some of my options there. So the last political cartoon, number 5, I would go in and fill out those other 4 questions for me really quick. And if you missed anything here, you can always go back or figure those out as well. But I'm going to have you pause it really quick if you have some more to fill out on this paper, because I'm going to move on to political cartoon number 6. So if you have not finished with political cartoon number 5, pause it really quick, because I'm going to move on. Okay. If you're done with political cartoon number 5, you're going to grab political cartoon number 6, that gray paper, and we're going to talk about this next one. So very similar to political cartoon number 5 is political cartoon number 6, because again, if you look at the title, Woman's Bondage in Utah and the Mormon Solution of the Cheap Labor Question, it's again kind of talking about women working and being sold, or they're laborers, so they're basically seen as slaves. And if you look down here, they're even like chained up and forced to work. And these guys have like whips and just other things here to make sure that they are working. So again, this is a very similar idea to the last one. So again, surrounding circumstances can be similar with the Civil War and slavery and how they're comparing it to polygamy. So the date here is March 11th, 1882, and you can see that down here. And the author can be Frank Leslie's Illustrated Newspaper. So this is one of the newspapers that was published in. So those two should be there. And again, this is in a newspaper, so it is a primary source. And because, again, it's all based off of rumor and personal beliefs and it's biased, it is not going to be reliable. So hopefully that answers some of those questions for cartoon number 6. But again, it is very similar to the last one, and you may have some of the same answers. But again, these bottom 4 questions, go ahead and fill those out for a second. If you need a second to do that, pause the video, because I'm going to go on to the news article number 1. Okay, so news article number 1. If you want to grab this one, again, it's another gray paper, and we are going to look at this one. So the author would be the Albany State Register. So this one right here, the newspaper title, and the date published would be March 9th, 1852. Now, I'm going to read through in a second, but again, primary source, not reliable because it's based off of rumor, and we're going to talk about surrounding circumstances in a second. And for these newspaper articles, go ahead and cross off the 4 questions on the bottom, because these all relate to the cartoons. They're not relating to this. So just cross out the 4 questions on the bottom for news article number 1 and news article number 2. But really quick in this one, it talks about a telegraph received that the Mormons of the Great Salt Lake City had published a Declaration of Independence in which they assert their determination to set up a republic for themselves, and that the United States authorities are put at defiance. All the United States officers had left, and the people were preparing to resist all authority by fortifying their settlements. And now, again, this is kind of based off of the rumor that the United States would have to go and crush this rebellion because they were rumored to, like Salt Lake City and the Mormons, they were rumored to be wanting to create their own country and be prepared for war. They wanted to fight and resist authority. However, this newspaper also continues and says, all which I have no hesitation in pronouncing a mistake. So this newspaper, they are denying the rumors. They're like, these are rumors. So this is not like accurate information. So anyway, that's that newspaper. So surrounding circumstances there, again, the reasoning behind this is because there were rumors going around and they needed to correct those. So that's what's happening here. And again, we don't have to answer the questions. If you need a second to fill out this information, pause the video for a second. I'm going to do that last news article, and then we should be done with most of the grade papers. So pause for a second if you need to finish news article number 1. Okay, I'm going to move on to number 2. So make sure you grab the paper, it's a grade paper, news article number 2. Same thing, it's in a newspaper, so it's a primary source. Is it reliable? It's kind of all based off of rumors, so probably not. The date here is June 13th, 1857. It's right there in the front. And the author you can put as the Rural Intelligencer. That's the newspaper title. So go ahead and put that down for the author. Now, this one, let's read this one really quick. So it says, the Mormons during this past winter have been perpetrating many outrages upon the Gentiles and the United States authorities. Those gentlemen confirm the accounts furnished the press by Judge Drummond. Judge Drummond is one of the judges that he took the money and he left and he started spreading these rumors. And they say that it is worse now in Salt Lake City than it was when Drummond left. Several have been murdered and many robberies committed by the Mormons during the last year, and the laws and courts of the United States are repudiated by the order of Governor Young. And his will is supreme in that section of the country. So right here, they're saying that it's even worse in Utah than it was a little while ago. Like they are murderers, they're robbers, all of these bad things, like they're just bad people. And Governor Young, he just wants to be the best. Like he already makes all the decisions there. He wants to have his own country so he can make those decisions again. So news article number 2, there's that one. Surrounding circumstances, again, this is coming from the rumors. And specifically, it tells us in here, these are some rumors from Judge Drummond. So right here, if you can look in here to see his name, it's in that second paragraph, just where the smaller print begins. So go ahead and pause it, fill out this article 2. And while you do that, I'm going to talk about this last one, because this one is really just, oops, sorry, the bell. This one is more so just, well, actually, we're going to skip that one. So, so that's kind of how the East Coast feels about all of this. Lastly, we are going to talk about the proclamation, Mountain Meadows, and some other documents. So for the proclamation paper, I need you to grab your yellow paper that says the proclamation at the top left. Okay, so we're going to kind of go back to the war, the Utah War, where they made the, oh boy, sorry, 1 second. Oh yeah, the U.S. Army kind of is headed out to Utah on President James Buchanan's order. So scouts, they see this and they go back to Brigham Young and they're like, hey, the Army's on its way to Utah. So Brigham Young, he immediately writes this proclamation and he tells people to fort up. So protect the women and children, and these are some things that you can write on this bottom section here. So to fort up, gather food to store for the duration of this possible war, to get ready for a fight, even though they don't want to fight, they want to be ready for it. And they also forbid anyone in and out of the borders of this Utah territory. They don't want anybody in or out. And lastly, they declare martial law. And this is basically, if this is the law that's declared, then people kind of make decisions based off of what they feel is necessary. Like if they need to fight, they fight, things like that. So this is the proclamation. Now, this was written in 1837. Sorry, I don't have the date on here, but 1887. Sorry, 1887. No, hold on. Give me a second. I gotta double check. I think it is 1887. 1857. Wow. Okay. 1857 is when this was written. It was written by Brigham Young, so he's the author. Is it reliable? So this is more so just like the things that happened to the Mormons and how the U.S. government treated them and that they need to prepare. So is it reliable? This is something that it may be more towards the Mormon experiences, but it is more so Brigham Young telling his people what they should be doing. So yes, it is a reliable source. It's primary and it's not as biased as some other sources like the newspapers. So surrounding circumstances. So again, the Utah War, President Buchanan, he's sending out his army. And so this is kind of why he decides to write this proclamation. So for surrounding circumstances, you can put something along those lines. Again, some of the other things, you can go through and read the proclamation. It is on Canvas, and you can fill in some of those other areas. But we are going to go into the Mountain Meadows Massacre. This is where your pink paper comes in. Now, I'm not really going to go over the film and how it relates to the textbook. I'm mainly focusing on the textbook. So if it comes down to it and you want to just fill in the text information and take the notes on the back of things that were mentioned, that would be fine. So this is, the textbook is a secondary source. So this is all secondary source information. But basically the story of Mountain Meadows, what happens here is a wagon train of people from Missouri and Arkansas, they are headed to California. And this is around the time that Brigham Young tells everybody that they need to ford up. And so he writes his proclamation, but as the wagon train of people pass through Utah, they're allowed in. But then by the time they get down to the southern part of Utah, the proclamation has been written and sent out. And so they aren't letting people leave their borders. Now, basically, they kind of provoked people. The wagon train, they were kind of taunting the Mormons there, and they were harassing them in some ways. And so because of these actions and what they did, Isaac Height, he sent a letter to Brigham Young, and he was like, what do we do? How do we handle this situation? But Brigham Young, he sends back a letter saying, don't do anything. Just let it go. It'll be fine. But before this letter can be back, John D. Lee, he decides, you know what? No, I'm going to take this into my own hands. I'm going to practice martial law, and we're going to figure this out. And so what he does is he goes to the local Paiutes, and he asks them, hey, can you go up to these people on this wagon train, and can you scare them? And the Paiutes are like, nope, that's none of our business. We don't want to get in the middle of these. Just leave us alone. So John D. Lee does not stop there, though. He dresses up some people in his Cedar militia, and he has them go and scare. He dresses them up as the Paiutes, and he has them go and scare the wagon train. Now, when they're scared, John D. Lee goes up to the wagon train people from Missouri and Arkansas, and he's like, hey, me and my team, the Cedar militia, we will escort you away to safety. Like, we've got your back. And as soon as they're kind of escorted out, he says, halt, each man do your duty. And they all turn and they kill most all of the people. There were about 17 people left that were not killed. And some of these people that were killed were also women and children. So this is what happened here at Mountain Meadows. Now, again, if you want to go back and listen again to get some of those notes in, go ahead and do that. But I'm going to move on to our last couple papers. The next thing that I want you to grab, so again, pause it if you need to write, because the next paper we're going to go on to is this executive order number 44 and rescinded order paper up in the top left corner. We're going to focus mainly on the executive order, and that one was written by Governor L.W. Boggs on October 27th, 1838. And he basically wrote in this executive order that the Mormons needed to leave Missouri or they were going to be killed. And so this source, it's a letter, so it's a primary source. And again, told you the dates right there. This was written, in Missouri. And the author is Governor Boggs. Now, is this reliable? This source is a letter that was telling us what's happening. So yes, this is going to be a reliable source. Surrounding circumstances. So basically, he wrote this order because people in Missouri did not like the Mormons. They were not happy with them. So that's why he wrote this executive order. So we're going to pause and move on to the Hans Mill. So if you need to pause the video to get some more of this information in, do that. We'll briefly talk about the rescinded order, so hold on to this paper, but not a whole lot. Okay, if you are all done with that part that we've talked about with that paper, grab your Hans Mill Massacre paper. Now this one, Hans Mill Massacre, the document that we read was published in 1992, and it was written by Alma R. Blair. Alma R. Blair. Now, the event happened October 30th, 1838, which was 3 days after the executive order was made. But the document that we were researching was by Alma R. Blair, and it was, 1992. Now, because it was published so late after the fact, it's a secondary source. So somebody was, that Alma R. Blair was not there to experience this. So this was a secondary source. Now, this happened in Missouri. And is this a reliable source? It could be, it could not be, depending on, because it is a secondary source, so it's not as reliable as it could be, but it's definitely not something that's super biased. So it is relatively reliable. And you can kind of explain one way or another how you feel about it. So one side of the conflict, we've got the Mormons that are staying at Hans Mill, and we've got Missourians who are not too happy with the Mormons and really don't like them, and they decide that they want to enact this executive order that the governor made, and they were going to go and they were going to kill these people. And so they went and they massacred and they killed 17 people. Killed 17 people at Hans Mill Massacre. Now, because of the executive order, this was not against the law. This is something that nobody got punished for. But that's kind of what happened at the Hans Mill Massacre. So if you have any more that you need to fill in here, hit the pause button because I'm going to move on to the death of Parley P. Pratt. Okay, so the death of Parley P. Pratt, this happened in Arkansas in 1856. And basically, Parley P. Pratt, he was a Mormon missionary, and he was sent to Arkansas, but he was attacked and killed, again, because of this executive order. So this executive order was kind of, it was, the reasoning behind this was because of the executive order, because people knew that they could get away with it, they killed him. And this is kind of where we go back to the rescinded order, because that rescinded order stopped the executive order that Governor Boggs made, but that was not until 1976 that rescinded order was written. So 1976 on that rescinded order. But so again, this death of Parley P. Pratt, it was still technically legal because of that executive order. But anyway, these are the papers that we should have hopefully mostly filled out through this. If you need to go back and hit any other points, feel free. But overall, this information should hopefully help you in our defense arguments that we should be coming up with over the next couple of days. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me. Thank you guys so much. Thanks. And